Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest live episode of VOX VOMITUS. I'm your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, Pretty Ugly, and The Japanese Box and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, Allison Martine, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes Dibs Since September, Move on Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. Joining us today, one of our favorite people in the entire world, Miss Sarah Langan, here to talk about her new novel, which comes out, I believe, April 6th, A Better World. Sarah, welcome back to VOX VOMITUS.
Thank you.
We didn't have Caladrius.
You have one.
I will mail them to you if I figure out how to work the camera. There. Okay.
We were searching our houses for things that could be a Caladrius. I have a toucan and a giant pigeon mask.
The pigeon mask is way more terrifying than my daughter's very cute little peacock. This is King Blue. Don't tell her I'm using him. I'm putting him back.
I like them both, but I like the pigeon mask could be scary, which is kind of fun if you're just walking around the house in that thing.
Dude.
Yeah, it really scares my dog. And the reason I have this pigeon mask is because we were trying to do this weird David Lynch kind of burlesque number where it wasn't sexy. It was just terrifying.
Well, and I've got, I think these are swallows on my, which is terrifying in its own way. It doesn't really, we don't have Caladrius outfits or white robes because I didn't raid the cherub choir at church for the little white robe. Could have done it, didn't.
So Sarah, welcome back. We've blabbed about birds now. And I think people who haven't read your book, obviously, because it's not out yet, are probably thinking, what are they talking about?
We don't know.
Tell us a little bit about you and then a little bit about A Better World.
Hey, thanks. First off, thanks for having me on. Thanks for reading it in advance. I love that.
We love
it. World comes out the 9th of April, which is Tuesday. But I'm starting the tour the Saturday before at Dark Delicacies in LA because we'd had it booked for like Tuesday at 6:00. And I was like, in Burbank, I was like, Del, do you think people are going to be able to get there? That's the owner. And he was like, no. I was like, I don't either. I don't think anyone's going to show up at this thing.
You know,
So
and I saw
Saturday.
Yeah, I saw the Saturday thing, and if my daughter's birthday, the one whose peacock I have stolen, her birthday is Friday, and her party is Saturday late afternoon, evening, or I would be coming up because I'm like, you're actually near me. I should come. I mean, it's not that near me. I'm in Orange, but I'm like, I kind of can't ditch my own kid's birthday party.
Could you get sick and have to leave early?
Oh, I'm sick and up in LA. That's just a little suspicious there. Yeah, I'll be running my own kind of A Better Worlds at a jump place. It'll be great. But yeah, you're touring for that, but like back and forth between LA and then East Coast too, aren't you?
Yeah. So first off, I'm sorry I'm doing this by my phone. I had like a fail, which is my laptop. Like I couldn't get Messenger from Facebook on my laptop because I put it on my phone. And then it was like, do you have the special code? And I was like, I don't have the special code. I don't know how to do this. I have
technology is not our friend today.
No, anybody looking, I look a little different. All my internal stuff was not cooperating. So I had to use my external, and then my camera wasn't working with the mic. Nothing was working. So we're just glad you're here.
Okay.
Sideways. Oh, there you are. You're better.
That's like a little better.
It's good. I'm on my phone as well.
Seems like a great.
It's fun. Set it on a coffee mug or something.
Yeah. I'm heading for it. I'm. You know what? I just feel like it works for now.
It's good.
It's all good. This is, the beauty of a live video podcast. We brought this on ourselves 4 years ago when we said, let's do this live.
Going live, but it does mean that like I see a lot of YouTube shows and they've got all these extra bells and whistles, and we're like, we don't know how to do any of those bells and whistles. And honestly, when we're talking about books, we don't have clips from the books. It's not like it's a movie show where we cut away to the big fight scenes. Like we have frightening pigeon masks.
We have props like Carrot Top.
You know what I should have brought? I should have grabbed the bag of jerky and sat here eating. I should not eat jerky. I've eaten some wrong things while doing this show, but like my mouth full of jerky would be just one step too far.
I was looking for, I used to have a white feather boa. It's someplace in my house, and I was going to like kind of bunch it up and be like, I killed a caladria.
Hey, Sarah, so you should probably tell people about what this book is, because it's not just about, it's not just a
book about birds.
There are birds in it, but why don't you tell us about A Better World and Plymouth Valley and the Hollow?
Yeah.
We'll all move there.
So it's a story of, it's told through the perspective of this woman, Linda Farmer, who her husband loses his job, and her job doesn't make enough money to support them. They've got twins.
Even though she's a doctor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of
a free clinic though. So
yeah, yeah. So, and it's near future, and they get a job in a company town, like a closed off company town. So it's like a Google or
Google.
One of them. And so they move there, and this town is like clean and has blue ribbon schools, and the people are educated, and there isn't crime like there was, and the air's clean.
It's basically Iceland.
Yeah.
But not quite as cold.
Yeah. And they know it's a mess. They know it's weird. They know it's not the best idea to move there, because you know, they're the kinds of people who want to live in the world. They're not the kinds of people who want to hide from reality. However, now if I had earphones, you wouldn't hear the leaf blower of my neighbor's house. Wouldn't that be amazing? What is he like? Are they right outside? What? And
if you were living in a company town, that wouldn't happen, Sarah.
I think it would, because in a company town, they'd be cleaning all the time.
Yeah.
But so what happens is they have to move there. It's just like they don't really have a choice. And when they get there, they discover there's all these rules. And the people adhere to this thing called Hollow, which is a set of cultural customs that they've invented. And it's these trials. It's like holidays, but also rituals and trials and races and competitions. And then there's this other aspect of it, which is they've got these genetically engineered
there he is
birds.
Yours is so much more terrifying than holding up a dog's squeak toy. Like, yeah, the teeth.
But this one is like the failed one that I didn't order from the company, because it's like, why would they make a beak that does that? It's so bad.
But it's ugly, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's like the whole thing's all
so bad.
Oh my gosh.
That
So
guy.
I'll have to make sure I put a screenshot up. So for people who are just listening to this in audio, they're like, what the heck? Imagine a seagull or like a pelican, but the top of the beak is completely flopped over like a limp noodle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So there are also these birds, because they wanted to make it's genetically engineered, and it's for food, and they're much more efficient than chickens. They don't need as much. They don't have as much waste. But the thing is with these birds is they're hothouse flowers, and they can only live in Plymouth Valley because they can't handle the pollution outside. So that they're the town's mascot, and everyone in the town keeps one. And they have like bird houses in the front of every house.
Like Sunny.
It's like a weird thing that I added to my book, but
I loved it.
It's this idea, like you come to this beautiful place and you're like, but what the hell is that? What is that thing? You know,
Yeah.
So I wanted
and it's a bird that like eats its own flesh too. Like they're like, it's such a weird bird. Like you think, oh, it's a bird, it's going to be lovely. And it's like, nope.
Okay, but first
kind of a cannibal.
My eldest daughter's history teacher, who apparently the 99% of the things she talks about is not history, but it's her own children and her chickens. And my daughter says she feeds her chickens rotisserie chicken. So apparently that is a thing people do, and it's awful and wrong. And Yeah, but like the Caladrius want their own.
I didn't even like feeding my birds when I had birds eggs. I was just like, because I still felt like it was just wrong.
Yeah, it's terrible. Well, but okay, so Sarah, I got about 3/4 of the way through the book before I'm like, did she make this up? Is this a thing? And then I looked it up because you didn't make it up. This is a real thing. And I told Jen, she's like, I didn't know. And so I was sending Jen a link to the Getty where they have these pictures of this thing. So
then I went down a Wikipedia Caladrius rabbit hole and then looked up all of the things, like all like the Caladrius and like in pop culture and
symbology and all this stuff. So you didn't just pull some random bird and make something up. This was all very intentional, and knowing what it means, I'm like, I see what you're doing, and it's horrible and I love it.
How did you know this bird? It's a real fictional bird. It's a mythological creature. How did you know about it?
And people think it might have been like a dove.
That's why I used the pigeon mask, because I'm like, a pigeon is basically a dove.
Mm-hmm. So. I have none of that. I have this.
I started it with like, I visited, when texts appear on your phone. I visited Omaha, Nebraska, and to see my aunt years and years ago, like 20 years ago. And they had wild peacocks like wandering. And I was like, I told people about that. I was like, there's peacocks. And everyone was like, there's not wild peacocks in Omaha, but I swear to God there were. And it just lingered in my mind. And it's sort of this, it's a bird that represents pride, but kind of arrogance. And like, it's also a corporate logo. So I was thinking of that, and that's what I was going with. And then I thought there was someone like, it just felt like it had been done. Like I thought I got to a wall with it and I was like, this isn't interesting anymore. And so I started looking around for what would it be, or should I just cut it out? Like I cut it out and I was like, no, I need it because it's got, there's some symbolic value to it. And so I started looking up, well, what are mythological creatures? And I like deep dived all of these. Like, I was like, what is a creature that eats itself? What is a creature that, all these different things. And then, I came with the sin eater, this caladrea. Like it's called pronounced caladrius, but like, since I've never heard it pronounced, like I've been pronouncing it for like 3 years in my mind and talking about it, caladreus. And the only reason I realized it wasn't that is my husband goes, how do you spell that? And I spell it and he goes, so it's caladrius. And I was like, I don't want to talk about
don't
it.
Break, don't like, we're getting a divorce.
We're the one that's in my head, and that's the end of the story. And I didn't know how it was pronounced because we don't have audiobooks because it's not out yet. We were reading it, and I assumed Caladrius, but I'm probably pronouncing it with the same.
No, I think you're right. You're right, and that's probably how I do it. I pronounce things wrong. And
but you're the creator. You could be like, no, but this bird, this specific version of the bird who lives in Better Valley is this.
Like Plymouth Valley says it like however Sarah Langan says it's pronounced. That's
and I feel like they would say it differently.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they would. They're like, oh, in the Hollow, we pronounce it this way. Outsider pronounce.
Where are you taking us?
I don't know.
I'm getting a charger because now my charger is low.
I thought we were going to like an altar in the woods.
Yeah.
That, or you were like, and I have these. And what's funny is, so we actually had some peacock experience just last week because we do have wild peacocks that roam around here, mostly in Irvine Park. But there are sometimes at the Santa Ana Zoo where we were, and it was there in the aviary just wandering around. So I have some pictures of my daughter all happy because this is like her favorite guy. So she's got pictures of her with the wild peacock. So when you're saying, oh, there's wild peacocks, I'm like, that seems actually pretty plausible. But the idea of a peacock eating itself, no. They're too fancy for that. They're like, we would never.
Well, so I used to live in Astoria and I didn't like it.
Did we lose Sarah?
Maybe she's frozen.
You got me?
She's
We got
back.
Good. I'm sorry. So
We ended with, I lived in Astoria and I didn't
And I
like
didn't
it.
like it.
And then it was a dramatic pause.
It's just like very how she feels about Astoria. The end.
Yeah, and I didn't like it. I would rather be a bird that eats myself.
All right, you got me now?
Yes.
And Annie's like, I love Astoria. So you're going to have to explain more because she's now
Okay.
offended.
Oh no.
It was like a sad time in my life.
Sarah, we can hear you, but we can't see you. But you can keep talking as you figure out how to get your camera back.
Poor Sarah. I believe Annie. Does Annie live in Astoria? There's.
She
I'm
might.
sorry.
She's from Long Island. I
Yeah.
missed that comment earlier. I was still at the banner part up. I didn't have that. So Annie said she's from Long Island too, and she loves Astoria. So you're going to have to finish the story, Sarah, to have some kind of redemption just for Annie.
Okay, well, super 100% fair. But I'll tell you that it was like not a great time in my life. And I was like, I don't know, I was in my late 20s, mid 20s. I was living with my two friends from high school. And we were on like the third floor of this walk up. And the guy under us was the landlord.
I can't hear you.
Now we can see you, but not hear you.
So the guy under you was the landlord. That's as far as we got.
I'm invested in this story, though.
But Annie's telling us she lives in Mastic, and Anne-Marie Nieves is in Astoria, and she'd go to visit every week. I probably botched that name.
Caladrius.
Caladrius. Caladrius.
Caladrius. I mean, that does sound cooler.
It does, but again, I use the Lord of the Rings pronunciation to get to Caladrius. Like
I know. Galadriel.
It's not like I'm using better phonetic rules. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, I was like, it rhymes with Galadriel.
we both do that. Sarah hopped off. We're gonna get Sarah back here in a second when she hops back on, and we will not take a puppet show break because I apologize for keep bringing King Blue out here as often.
But no, it's good. Did you know that a female peacock is called a peahen?
They are, because they're all technically all like peafowl, not
Peafowl. Yeah.
But who wants to say that? But I was not complaining, but I was just confused how the peacocks or peahens got in the aviary because it's the colors of the Amazon aviary. And I'm like, there are no peacocks in the Amazon, guys.
Well,
And then
one time I went.
They're from Javan and they're in Indonesia, and that's just where they are right now because they're redoing a lot of the zoos. So they're like, we put the peacocks where we want them, okay?
When I was at a campsite in New Jersey a million years ago, and they had not really wild peacocks, but peacocks roaming throughout the entire campground.
Just
like
doing your thing.
Why are there peacocks here in New Jersey?
Because I think the thing is, people who don't know better go, what a beautiful bird. They have not heard the peacocks and then went, oh, now we have that. Because they are not the most pleasant thing. Sarah's hopping back on here. And Sarah, she's just shaking her head at us.
Like total fail.
But we can hear you now.
We can hear you. It's just
We can hear
quiet.
you. You're quiet.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Uh-oh.
You're good. You can hear me.
Now you're great.
Now you're great.
I think you were covering your speaker with your thumb or something because now you're much louder.
No, I don't think I was. I
okay.
didn't hear a thing.
No, just when you first came back because you were quieter and now you're louder. So
okay.
Like, we're good. So you lived in Astoria and it was not a great time in your life, and the landlord lived below you. Then what happened?
Yeah, he had like he was always working on a mail order bride, and he was odd. And then it was just like I was just like, I had this job I didn't like, and I was trying to get published, and I was like working late at night. We had this shag carpet, and it was like the R train.
No, you had me at shag carpet. I get it.
It was so dirty, and we had to walk like, like, and at night you try and get home on the R train from Manhattan, and it would be like, this train didn't come again. This train didn't come again. Or like if I had to work late, it was like, oh, well, this is going to be a 3-hour ride. And I was like too like foolish not to have just like paid for a cab. Anyway, I named her Chicken Lady. And she was our next door neighbor. And I don't know if she didn't like my landlord or what, but she was this old Polish lady. And she used to throw chicken carcasses on our lawn for the pigeons to eat.
Oh,
Hold on. I have the prop for that.
Yeah.
Oh, this story, you could just write this totally just like creative nonfiction and win a Stoker Award for it.
the chicken lady is right there with the pigeons, and then I want her to be standing there in Jen's pigeon mask, just standing there staring at the creepy landlord.
Yes.
This is what you're really about. Okay, so Linda Farmer of the Farmer Bowens, the corporation that is their family, they moved to this town because they have really nothing else that they can do, and they feel like, we know this is creepy and weird, but there's some adjustment, and it'll be fine, hopefully. And then it's not fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, Linda works it out with the people around her, and she kind of figures it out, and they all sort of are figuring it out. But, it's sort of, to me, it's a contrast between a democracy, or a place where you have a freedom of ideas, and a place where you don't.
Yeah.
And so in Plymouth Valley, I think they're also afraid that, the citizens of Plymouth Valley, that you can't say anything that runs contrary to the ideas of this corporation, that they've turned into a kind of religion. And it gets progressively more unsettling, these notions of what these people in this town are really up to. And there's a lot of people in town who don't want to know. And I think that's a really natural human reaction. And some people in Linda's family would just prefer not to know.
I mean, her son finally has a girlfriend.
Can we just talk about her son? I was hoping at some point you would tell me what his full name was and that it wasn't Hip. You named him Hip. Can you please explain why we named him Hip? And is that supposed to be short? Because Josie and Hip. And I'm just going like,
I just thought maybe the Farmer Bowens smoked a lot of pot for a while.
Maybe.
That's the vibe I got.
Like Hippocrates, like the first,
the doctor. I thought maybe that was what it was short for, but we never got a longer version. I'm going,
I don't think she would have named him the full name. I think she just Hip. Like, she would have been like, that's too pretentious.
Because what are you going to do? Be screaming at your toddler in the park? Hippocrates, come over here.
Russell was like, I really like that name. And she was like, that's good, but can we just do Hip? Like,
it's like, no wonder he was not fit again. They named him Hip, and then you're wondering.
I know. He's like, my sister's name is Josie, and my name is Hip.
I love the name Josie.
I love the name Josie because it's like Josie and the Pussycats.
That, or she could be short for, Josephine and Josie. I love the name, but Hip. But yeah, Hip's finally, he doesn't start out so great, but he gets a girlfriend, and
she's a peach.
Yes. Oh, she's a something, all right.
I think she's recognizable, though. You've seen that.
Oh yeah. And I think I didn't enjoy her so much because I think at one point in my life, I probably was that girl.
Oh.
And I'm like, ooh, no wonder my high school boyfriend broke up with me. I remember a petition as well that I was like really into something. I'm like, I'm getting PTSD.
Okay, but mine was about
for more privilege. That's what everyone needs.
Yeah,
it's
about awful lot. Not like the privileged people don't have enough privilege.
I know. This was not a petition for Amnesty International. No. It was just like, hi, I feel like my privilege isn't as guaranteed as I would like it to be. And I would like my friend's privilege to also be that guaranteed.
I would like her privilege to be privileged-er.
Yes.
Is that a word? Privileged-er? I don't think it's even.
But you notice, like, she's still not, like, she's like, Hip doesn't have privilege, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because So for people who are like, what are you talking about? So the whole thing that adds a layer of uncertainty to these privileged, gilded people here is that you don't necessarily get to stay. So for people who come, you have like an annual review. And if you don't make it, goodbye, you go back.
Oh, yeah. So
And
you could live there for like 9 years or whatever. And you're like, oh.
and then yeah, and then they boot you out. And then if you don't have any, like for people like the Farmer Bowens, they are there on their last resort and they have like zero money. So as Linda's starting to go, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the place to be, her options are looking at an empty wallet going, and what would I do when I left?
Yeah, like where do I live with the children? Is it a car? Is it
is it under the overpass over there with other families who are also stuck there? But then she runs into people who maybe aren't big fans of the system and possibly really crazy. So there's some exciting, interesting people in here who are not quite in touch with the world at different points. And some of them are like, oh, I'm totally fine now. But then they're not. But that's fine too.
No, you did really create an amazing cast of characters. Like every time we were introduced to somebody, I was just like, oh, I hate that person. I want to spend more time with them. I want to spend more time with the Beltane King. Like,
I do not. Thank you very much. I would like to stay as far from the Beltane King as possible.
Oh, what a disaster. I mean,
I would rather go live in the back of Sunny's birdhouse than hang out with the Beltane King. Be like, I'll just hang out with Sunny and this. And then, people hiss at you if, they don't like things, just like the birds. I mean, I think that's what we should start doing, is just hissing at people. I'm sure everyone listening to the audio right now was like, could you please
stop that?
It made sense in my head, and I'm sure it did for Sarah too when she was writing this. Did you do that while you were typing it? Just an S there.
I was thinking of that, just like the social. So I live in Los Angeles, and you probably experienced this, where it's just it's a one company town, and there's a feeling that you really can't make any enemies. And I was kind of shocked when I first moved here how much people cared about status, especially when they're scared. It's not a joke. Like that swingers, what kind of car do you drive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People care about this. It's insane. And getting a job here is really contingent on whether people like you. And so you can't always be honest. I still am, because, I don't. But
you're like, I'm too tired to lie.
Yeah. Well, I mean.
And also, fuck it.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't think life rewards the meek. But, except if you're a producer. And
she's like, I just had to get that in there.
Yeah.
Another job.
But I think most people, they never say no. And I was surprised in New York, you're like, hey, we're having a party, who's coming? And people are like, I'm coming, I'm bringing a sixer or whatever. And here you say, hey, we're having a party, who's coming? And it's crickets. And it's the same people, and they will show up, but they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to commit to anything.
No, because a better offer might come along,
something
more important than you. And so you can't commit, because then you'd have to say no to somebody that you can't say no to, or that you shouldn't say no to. So yeah, it's not. And I'm down in Orange County, so I don't even have that. I don't even like driving to LA, but that's where my dad is now, so I have no choice sometimes. But again, it's like people are like, oh, well, you're from LA. I'm like, no, I am not. I'm very quick to point it out, because it's a different culture, even though we're not that far away, because it isn't a one company town down here. We're a little different, but that's that. And then they're literally in a jar, like with air thing. So unfortunately for you in LA, you have LA Air and not Plymouth Valley Air.
Yeah, we are literally in a LA Air inversion. But yeah, I mean, I feel pretty strongly that there's people are always looking at each other. What do you have? How did you get it? How could I get it?
What am I willing to do to get that?
Yeah, and then there's like the chit chat, the quiet chit chat behind people's backs that affects their ability to get work. And again, I never saw this in New York. I really didn't. Like, you just say like, "Hey, Mister, you're out of line." Like, to the person.
Oh my gosh, that was such an amazing 1950s movie. Like, I'm the girl Friday. Hey, Mister, you're out of line. I won't
Listen,
take
I've
that.
said things like that. I don't think I'd say them here, but I've said them in New York, and people are like, "You're right, I am out of line. I've taken that note," you know?
Yeah. I mean, as an East Coast girl, I get it. I'm like,
yeah. But I remember when I first moved here, my next door neighbor was an East Coaster, and she said, "Listen, rule number 1, never give anybody the middle finger while you're driving, because they'll try to kill you. They will chase you down and try to kill you." And I was like, "What? Like, that's just like a French hello in New York." Like, it's just
and I was just like, I don't think it's
like,
legal to drive in Boston without doing that. Like, I think it's part of driving in on the East Coast.
They will follow you. They will, like, it's so passive aggressive, this town, that something as overt as a middle finger triggers them. They go nuts. So, and that's also interesting. Like, I kind of embedded that into the characters in this town in Plymouth Valley, where like they're just any overt act makes them nuts.
Yeah,
they don't know what to do with it. They're set off, you know, because everything is a whisper.
Everything's a whisper, and they keep telling Linda to just shh and go with it, and she just is like, "Okay, I'm not going to do that." Or, "Okay, I'm going to try." She tries for like a minute and a half, and then something happens. She's like, "Yeah, I can't with
I
this."
know. I loved the conversations like between her and her husband. He's like, "All you have to do is give me like one day, just be quiet." Like, just, she's like, "Okay, I definitely am going to behave." And then like 2 seconds later, she's like, "I'm breaking out of the town."
Also, I just did this. And then he's like, "So then I had to do this, and it's okay. I'm fixing it. We're getting it fixed. It'll be fine." And she's like, "I didn't really want you to fix it, though. I'd kind of rather not fix it at this point. But it's all fine."
So before,
I do think that, you know, I did read, I love Ira Levin, and I love Grady's book, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And these notions of women's places in a marriage. And I don't think they've evolved as much as we think they have.
No, they definitely haven't.
And
we're all like, nope.
And it's interesting to me that the ones that the ones that get popularized in fiction are written by men often, but they're also very good. Like Stepford Wives is spectacular.
It's spectacular.
And so is Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And I asked Grady, I was like, "How'd you do that?" Because I'm getting mad. All these men are telling our stories, but they're doing well enough that
they're doing so well that you can't be mad.
Got to live with it.
Another book I absolutely loved was Nat Cassidy's Mary.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's writing about a woman going through menopause, and I'm reading it going,
yep. Like,
yep, he's got it.
Well, and everything I've read, and maybe I haven't read enough of Grady's, but all of Grady's stuff, his main characters are always female. So I feel like that's just who he likes to write, and he nails the voice very well. And in Southern, I can't forget the title. It's just too long. But you have women who are basically being told, "Shut up, you're wrong," and you have that same era of "shut up," or "I'm still looking into it, so let's not jump to any conclusions because that can't be right." But you also have stuff, and I love, Sarah, that you write these near futures, because this was the same in Good Neighbors, and I didn't do the dating. Is this further ahead in the Langan verse or same era? Because it feels like it's about the same time.
It's not much further. It's like one generation ahead. It's 20, 30 years from now.
Because it's basically like things you can totally see them going. And I love near future because it's so easy to see that we're headed there. And it's not like this stuff where we're all living on space stations and we worked it all out, or we didn't work it all out, so we're all living on space stations. But either way, you can see these real issues of how things are for us, just the pressure applied just a little harder, a little fewer options, things are just a bit worse, and having them have to be there. But having that near future situation where you've got these people who are like, okay, well, we can't have people talk to each other because there's all this separation. And you even slipped in the fact, and I didn't pick it up on it right away, that apparently the United States has fallen at some point, because I'm like, wait a second, United Colonies, what the heck happened here?
I was like, that kind of tracks though.
But I'm just going, what did Texas do? No blaming Texas. It was probably Florida or Ohio. People are always blaming Ohio for something. It's a meme, but nobody really knows why.
Listen, I lived in Ohio for a long time. You don't really need to, you can't blame them. They're not doing anything. Maybe that's why you blame them, because they're like not doing anything.
Nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens. People don't even really vote very much.
But yeah, you have these people who aren't talking to each other. So when people are starting to look into what could be going on here, or is this a problem, you've got lack of connection and people not be able to get straight answers, and people possibly getting sick from stuff maybe, but everyone's calling it a different name and calling it something different and treating it with something different. And it makes even seeing if there's a problem, seeing a pattern, if no one's calling it the same thing, you can't even call it a pattern because you're like, well, that's not the same thing as this. Like, oh, but it is. And it's possibly caused by something that the better world might be doing. Oh dear.
Well, I think there's definitely a lack of consistent information right now, more than there has been in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of corporate interest, and it's because of a lack of regulation and a total failure of our government to regulate. And I think when, there's also this weird thing where you don't want to, where global governments don't want to share their science.
Yes.
And to everyone's detriment. And I wanted to write a little bit about that and address that, because, and then finally, I think that there is, when you stop teaching and in the education system and let computers do everything, you're really setting yourself up for a fall. And I suspect that that statistics is going to be the first thing that goes. And statistics is an incredibly valuable math.
Yeah.
Where we know cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's like magic, like you can take this sample size, and from the sample size, how accurate it is, et cetera, et cetera. And you can understand what things are responsible for a given circumstance. You can actually pinpoint it. And I'm noticing that most of the stuff is happening where you just input your data into software and it gives you an answer.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how it works, very easily any company could manipulate it. And
that's true.
A pharmaceutical company that wants to push a very specific pill. Oh,
well, they already did that.
They did.
They did that with Oxy.
Yeah.
And it was like, if you knew anything about science, you would have known Oxy was addictive. So I don't understand the disconnect, but I think it was the removal of scientists from the FDA. And I think there's just a push to politicize scientists and put them in a box and shut them up. And they're really the people that make the world better.
Mm-hmm.
They drive action, and most scientists don't have an agenda. They just, because the facts are the agendas themselves. You say the world's getting hotter. Like, I'm not trying to upset you. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. The world's getting hotter.
Yeah.
It's going to cost
Data.
money.
The
How
data
much
is
money is
vote.
it going to cost? A lot. We should probably stop warming it because it's going to cost more money to be hot than to stop the global warming.
Yeah. So I love the near future books. I love Good Neighbors. I love this. What I loved so much about both of those is kind of your found footage, your different elements to this, like newspaper articles, a book from the future. And Good Neighbors had that too. Do you write those as you're going, or do you write them later and plop them in? Do you write them first?
Like I try and I use them as context and sort of to place where I'm going in a story. So I'll often write them first and then they don't survive. I'll go back and change them and sort of use them to further the story. So, I mean, they evolve along with everything else. But they're fun to write. They're really fun to write.
How is it writing the brochures too? Because this one had both these like future news articles, or basically not even news articles, but basically articles from scholarly studies looking back on this time period, which I love. So it's like, well, it implies that we got past this point, which is good.
I know. I was like, humans still exist. We don't know where they're really writing this from, but
Exactly. But you also had these things, and it was funny because so for me, I was on NetGalley and I had to keep like making my screen smaller and bigger and bigger and smaller in order to see some of them. I'm like, I still don't know what number 2 was. I'm like, Jen, send me a picture of number 2 on this page because it wouldn't quite line up. I'm sure that'll be perfect in the book, but like these pictures of the Caladrius,
the Caladriuses,
yeah,
the Caladry.
Caladry.
That's a cocktail. It's like a kind of Better Valley martini.
Yeah, probably has clamato in it with that sound. Doesn't it sound like it has clamato in it? Yeah. I bet Caladrius drink clamato.
They would love it.
They would. I don't
They
think
would.
I would drink it. But
I would not drink that.
maybe at brunch.
Or if you were just handed something and then you drink it real fast at a party and then you're like, what was in that?
Mushrooms.
No, they would be like, just
No,
clamato and some mushrooms.
It's none of those kind of mushrooms. Like, if it would be more fun if it was, but it's supposed to just like help me be awake.
Oh, your mushroom coffee.
Yeah, it doesn't have any of the like the woo that was in some of the drinks that Linda got handed sometimes. Like, don't drink that. What? Yeah, I've had 3. What?
Yeah, like the brochures were really fun to write, and like I kind of wanted it to be corporate speak. Like the author of these brochures is named Meta Marie, and she's the not Meta Marie. What's her name? Like, I'm sorry, Anouk. I changed.
How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, sorry. You're like, what? I was like, oh no. So it's Anouk. I changed it to Anouk, and she's the granddaughter of the founder. And so she's untouchable. And she thinks she's a genius. And she's really into eugenics and bloodline.
She's a poet and in epigenetics. And they just mean it's not their fault they got sick. They just had bad parents and bad genetics. So
yeah, she's super into like the reasons that the poor have problems are because domestic violence and pollution, and it's all their environment. It's not, whatever. So it was fun to write, and it was also about like, you'll see like these corporate brochures are so much into inclusiveness, like everyone's represented, and it feels to me like it's all like this is happening now, where it's like this internalized idea of what we're supposed to say, and we're very much policed on what we're supposed to say, and if we say it wrong, we're like culturally murdered. God forbid you mean well and you say the wrong thing. So everything's said wonderfully, and it's completely empty.
Exactly. There's like nothing behind.
There's no backup. And I think it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that like that's the direction that this progress has spun in.
And Regina would like us to be drinking a cocktail with clamato and chicken feet. No, Regina, we're not drinking that. It's terrible.
Oh, as a vegetarian, no. And as a human, no.
Regina, you can't have the clamato either because there's clam juice. Because why does somebody want that in their tomato? I don't understand. I've never understood that.
Yeah.
My
yeah,
mom
dry
used to eat
Khalidi.
pig's feet. She had like a jar of pig's feet.
Did she
And she
eat
would
them,
just, like-
or was it just for decoration?
So she would pull it out of the refrigerator and just like
Like
munch on them.
suckle on them.
Oh,
She grew up on a farm in Iowa and was like, they're like a delicacy. And I was like, are they?
Are they? But like, have you ever had a delicacy? Like,
hey, honestly,
I mean, maybe.
they are delicacies. I'm like, I will pass on that particular experience. Thank you, snail. Not eating snails. I will pass. Thank you very much.
I can't imagine though, like looking at a pig's knuckle and going like, that looks delicious. If I just kind of
But
like suckled.
I once tried chicken's feet, you know, at this restaurant in Chinatown in New York, and they were like, it's a delicacy, it's amazing, and I was like, I
don't think I
they
could
had the
physically
nails
put it in
still
my-
on it. They had the nails still on it, and I
Yeah.
still think about it, and I'm like, that was the most horrible thing. Like I couldn't even swallow it.
No, but like foods of scarcity or things that were at one time like, oh, well, only the poor eat that. Then they become like, that's what happened with lobster. But again, someone's like, so that is a bug.
That was
from
the first slave revolt. Do you remember hearing
lobsters.
over
I don't know.
lobster? Because they were like,
Lobsters?
it was like, stop feeding us lobster all day. Like, it's the worst.
And then the entire state of Maine is like, what are you talking about? This is what we
You don't
base our
even mind
economy
that,
on.
particularly. Yeah, and again, like some of the foods that you have brought in there, there's clearly scarcity of beef because it's like at some point she gets beef and is like, I haven't had beef in a really long time, and that makes sense with the near future. But there's also pomegranates, so there's lots of that, and then of course everybody's eating their delicious caladrius. Sorry, King Blue. We're eating that too. But again, like that's something I love when you're looking at dystopians and figuring out, well, what would people eat there and what can they eat? And when I sit there eating so many things made of mushrooms, I'm like, I don't mind a future that has lots of mushrooms, but none of the ones that make you see stuff, okay?
But do you know, you like, I'm like, do you know what happened to me? As if you would know.
No,
Do you
I don't know. Did it happen with mushrooms or pomegranates? Or something
It
else?
happened
Chicken
with
feet.
mushrooms.
Ooh.
I was sick for years, like my sinuses, and and it was only on one side, my left side. And then, but I would get sick everywhere because once it got in. And so I went to an ENT, and he was like, he did a great job on the surgery, pulled everything out, it was amazing. And I was like,
is there a mushroom up there?
I was like, you missed something. It's still there. Go back in. And he was like, no. And he took.
Sarah's gone. What happened?
Oh, no, I can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Sarah. We'll never know the end of this story. Oh, dear.
I need to know the end of this story more than anything in my life.
We lost Sarah.
Oh, no.
I think there was a mushroom up her nose.
I think there was too.
That is what happened, but I'm terrified.
I'm going with that.
No, and I know because so in some of this future stuff I've read, they talk about mushrooms being a food of the future because they can grow in so many places, they grow quickly, and they have a lot of good nutrients. And people like me who love mushrooms, I'm like, bring it on. And people like my husband are like, I would rather starve to death. Thank you.
I would starve to death.
Yeah, and I love them. And the coffee that I've been drinking, there's a bunch of them, but I got it partially because it's supposed to be better for your digestive system, and you're supposed to not have the crash afterwards. And last week I drank it was great. This week I'm like, it's not working. I'm taking naps again. There's Sarah. I'm going to try putting her back. Sarah, was there a mushroom up your nose?
There was a mushroom up my nose. But
I love it, and I hate it so
calls
much.
me and someone keeps calling me, the sound goes out.
No. Sarah's on a show. Stop calling Sarah.
Stop calling.
So I love that mushroom story.
No, there's
what-
more. So I finally, it was years, and like they had to give me steroids up the nose injections to get the antibiotics to take, and they kept being like, "You're fine," and I was like, "I think there's something wrong." And I finally went to a new doctor who was like, "Let's go check out," and he like did a surgery in September,
Right.
and I woke up and he goes, "There was a lot of fungus up there," and it was a fungus that had been trapped, and the fungus had been there so long it had forced my bone to grow like an almost an extra bone between my eye and my brain, and then a trap of fungus inside of that.
Okay, but this wasn't a mushroom. It was a fungus, but not like, portobello up your brain.
That's the same thing. This is sporer. Oh my gosh.
Sucked it out. I'm like 1,000,000 times better. It was there for at least 7 years.
7 years?
Do they know how it, like, what
Yeah, they
happened?
were like, so I had so much scar tissue in there because I've had so many sinus infections and stuff that it just made it more likely to get trapped. And then I just didn't have a good doctor, like I was going to everyone because my sinuses are so tiny that it was impossible to see in there. You had to do surgery, and the first time the surgeon just didn't find it, probably because there was this extra bone he didn't go behind.
Yeah, trying to protect it. Oh, Sarah, that is the best story.
I mean,
I'm sorry for you
anymore, but the lawyer in me says medical malpractice. But at the same point, it's like the standard of care being such that would another doctor know to go behind it? If there's an extra bone hiding it, I guess not. But when you're complaining that it's still there, then they should have gone back. But oh my, yikes.
How has this not become a story that you've written?
It's just happened. September was when they.
That's the next book. I mean, we were going to ask you what you're writing next, but maybe you should just write that there.
I hope it's that.
I mean, spore horror.
I don't know how much drama there is in it.
You could do like a spin-off short story about Linda is the doctor who finds the mushroom, and she's like, we've got it.
Well, what I didn't realize is like The Last of Us was right with those monsters because it does force growth. Like it made a bone. My body, like, I don't know why, but that's what a fungus does. And actually it's on the rise because of global warming. Definitely valley fever. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
No. What's valley fever?
Oh, so it's a fungus that you get in the desert, and it's just way on the rise. Like we were just in Joshua Tree for spring break, and their newspaper, I was like or their magazine, like Palm Springs is like their big article is like valley fever, like protect yourself against valley fever if you have.
I know.
You really can't. And it's really hard to get rid of. It's like antibiotics for a very long time.
Well, antibiotics, but you'd also need like antifungals.
Yeah, antifungals for a long time.
Yeah, and again, you'd have to know where you're targeting. I mean, again, not a doctor, but yikes.
Yeah, it gets everywhere. That's a bad one. You're on antifungals for a very long time.
I'm never leaving my
house.
It's
common. Or not common, but common enough that it's like people are being told, especially out in the desert, to watch for it.
But how
you have emotionally scarred us for life, Sarah.
Thank you. If I'm drinking the mushroom coffee, does that inoculate me against it? Because I feel like it should have some kind of health benefits that like the fungus will fight, and then like the ones I have, like it's like lion's mane and some other stuff that's good for my brain and other stuff. It's obviously not helping my brain, but let's pretend it is.
So like if you make friends with fungus, will fungus be nice to you?
Well, I'm hoping like the good fungus.
I feel like it's like the Borg. It's not really.
It's just I will be assimilated. Oh dear.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because Regina's saying the cordyceps is the fungus that will control the brain of ants, because that's what it is in The Last of Us and stuff. Cordyceps, if that can get to us, we're screwed. As Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey have shown us very, very effectively. But again, like I hadn't even heard that valley fever, and why are they calling it valley fever instead of valley fungus? Because they should call it fungal fever. Valley fever just sounds like you're going to start talking like this, like, oh my God.
I know, you get like a really bad flu, and then all of a sudden you're this.
And then you like sound like this, and like you're from the valley, like, oh God. Okay, but seriously, are you going to write about this, or are you writing about something else now, Sarah? You don't know.
You know what? I just finished a novella that I'm super into, and hopefully my agent will be able to sell it. And it's a crazy story about a woman who's like miserable and like a failed journalist late at night watching YouTube, and the big YouTube psychic. Like it's a world where magical thinking is like the religion of the day, and people are making tons of money off of it. And the most lucrative YouTube psychic comes on and is like, stay tuned for my big reveal in a month. And she's making billions. And the miserable woman realizes that it's her high school enemy, Pam Kowalski. And she's like, ah! So it's her story of trying to destroy Pam.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
I'm here for it.
I'm here for it. I'm like, that is the best thing I've ever heard.
Regina says they keep putting that, I'm assuming you mean cordyceps, in the health drinks, and it freaks me out. That's why you got to read labels. Like, don't just say it has mushrooms. Ask what kind of mushrooms. They are not all created equal. Some make you see stuff. Some turn you into a zombie ant, and some just taste good. So,
and some just live in your sinuses.
They
forever.
just live there.
They just live there, making bones and giving you sinus infections.
I actually think it affected my mood. Like, I think there was
sure. Well, there was stuff pushing on your brain and new bones forming in your head. That's not normal,
like,
Sarah.
I'm seeing, like, my migraines. I've never gotten anything but a migraine aura. The last few years, I had real migraines, and I was like, my head was hurting all the time.
You had a mushroom in your head.
There was a mushroom in there.
Wow.
And on that note,
Sarah, this has been educational and amazing and terrifying. You are amazing as always. Everybody, please make sure to check out A Better World, April 9th. I've already pre-ordered mine. I can't wait. And tell us what we need to do to get a Caladrius toy.
Send me your addresses and I'll mail you guys.
Oh my gosh. I will do a photo shoot with my dog in that.
Oh God, don't let him eat it.
I won't.
My kids will be like, what? That's terrifying. I already learned the lesson to not scare my kids with photo shoot stuff after the hot dog fingers. Fiona has not forgiven me for that.
Yeah, we got the hot dog fingers gifted to us by Vince Laguna and from Everything Everywhere All at Once.
My middle child thought it was funny. My eldest did not know.
My dog hated it. I just put them on and he was like, nope. No, thank you. And then I felt really bad.
Really disturbing, that part of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It's really disturbing to see yourself like that too. I was like, no. So Sarah, I think she's probably getting another call already.
Jesus, I'm like, how do I stop this? Like, and I'm like, if I put it on, I'm a technophobe. So I was like, if I turn everything off, but then will the sound go off? Like, I can't.
Probably.
It was a very exciting episode. Everything happened.
Where all the stories stopped at the most exciting part. I lived in a store. I hated it. There was a mushroom up my nose. And then
I know, and we were like,
what are you
so
doing?
it was really good handling of the suspense. You understood your audience. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody who tuned in live. If you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, hit subscribe. Until then, we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
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 You waving goodbye with the page.